Alright everybody, here is the transfer table so far. I'm doing 3 pits in this one. It makes this about 3 feet long. So far I've put it together pretty much per the instructions, but you can see this pattern here that I've added all of these screws. And before anyone's too impressed with my nice consistent drill pattern, I made these little templates with my laser, so I could just kind of put those in there and use them as a guide to keep everything on center. You won't see them when it's all done anyway. I'll cut some styrene strip to lay in there and cover all the screws. But I'll show you what I'm doing special. Is, when you assemble this, it is just really flimsy. And for the transfer table to work well, it's got to be pretty flat this way and pretty flat this way. So, planar, the whole thing in one plane, or the table will, rock as it moves. And if it does that, it's just not going to work well. So looking on what I've been doing on the back here, I've been adding all these aluminum channels. I got this idea from watching a YouTuber called CSX Mad, and if you've never watched his channel, I'd go check it out. He does some really cool stuff. He did this pretty much the same thing with this transfer table. He only had 2 pits, so I'll show you what I'm doing a little bit different. But he also did one of those magna rails where cars come out of the automobile manufacturing plant and they drive around and go up the ramp and right into the auto racks, and it is about the coolest thing I think I've ever seen. So these channels, take out the twist this way, and then these tie bars, pull the sections together, nice and tight so that gear rack has a nice continuous spacing. But where I'm going one step further than CSX Mad went is I'm adding these long channels too. And he looked like he had a pretty good solid plywood top, and I'm working on foam. Plus he only did 2 bays, I'm doing 3. So what you can see, I'm going to put these screws in. I got long enough screws that they're sticking up high enough. I don't know if I want to be able to do this and hold the camera, so bear with me. So I'm now making some long pieces, and yeah, this is going to be hard. These long pieces, there it is, goes over all the screws, there it is, like that, and then I will tighten that nut down on those. You can see, did that back here already. Oh, missed one. I have to get that in there. And then that'll give me flatness and rigidity in that plane. So once all that's done, we'll flip it over and we'll start giving it some test drives on the bench. Alright everybody, just a little further along here. You can see I got all my long pieces on. Everything is bolted in. You can kind of see how it's sort of double bolted. First piece bolted down, second piece bolted down. The trick really is to not over tighten it, because you could probably start deforming the plastic in weird ways. But you have all these vertical bars that are holding everything flat in that plane, and then these horizontal bars that are holding everything flat in that plane. And again, you probably can't, really appreciate it if you've never put one of these together, but they are just so flimsy, and now it is very solid. So progressing. I have gone and cut off all the little posts they give you to screw into your plywood, since I'm just going into foam. I won't use those. I probably won't actually do anything to secure this into place. My turntable isn't. There's nothing actually holding it there except all the tracks. Just all the tracks coming up to it really pin it down pretty good. It's not going anywhere. That's the way I look at it. We'll see when we get it actually in the layout. The one thing I'm doing now, you can kind of see I got this little vice grip on the end. I'll show you on this end. The pit walls have this little like dog bone that clicks in, and it's interesting how they did it. So when I first looked at it, I'm like, well, you got that little piece proud there, but it's not. This piece is thinner. Boy, it's hard to even do. So once it gets in there, everything's level and everything's flush. But anyway, I just got a little plastic cement in there, and I just got my nose vice grips on there, letting it dry. That won't be too bad. Again, if I was going on plywood, it would probably just force it in there and it'd be fine. So, what to do yet here? I gotta turn around and cut the nubs off the other side there. You can kind of see those nubs sticking up down there on the bottom. Right, there's one. I got to get the other 3 corners glued like I'm doing that one. And then this is I'll call it the away sensor, since this is the end where all the electronics come in. And there's a sensor here, so the controller knows when the transfer table bridge has reached this end. And this sensor comes glued in, here. So if you add the transfer table, you have to kind of knock it off with the hot glue. And they give you enough wire here that if you add an extension, there's enough wire there to just run it. But I don't think they gave you enough wire if you added 2. So I'm going to have to re-glue the away sensor down at that end, and then probably splice in some wire. And once I get those things done, which shouldn't take too long, I've got to find my hot glue gun. That'll probably be the thing that takes the longest. Once I get that done, I should be ready to test here. I did connect power to this yesterday. I was pretty surprised looking in the directions. This just attaches to the DCC bus. It literally runs off DCC power. Yeah, so looking forward to being able to test it. I want to test it right here on the couch workbench. Yeah, the couch has been working really good for this because it's long. So just being able to set it here on something that's not flat, not solid, and be able to test it, I think will be a good test of this whole rigid backing. And we'll see you at the next step. All right, I got the bridge on, I got some temporary power run over, and it looks like I got power to the bridge. We'll go ahead and do the calibration. So what should happen now is the bridge is going to run all the way to the end. It's going to find that sensor, and then it will automatically go to whatever I have programmed as position 1. And I have just temporarily set that up so the edge of the bridge is in line with that section line, just kind of so I got something to reference from. Everything seems to be running very smooth. I'm going to credit that to the very rigid backing, since it's just sitting here on the couch. You can see it looks like the deck lights are lit up, the cab light is lit up. Not sure what'll happen once it changes direction here. It looks for position 1. There's home. So there's the warning light blinking. And will it stop where I programmed it? Yes, it did. So the only problem I had, first time I went to calibrate it, the bridge just went and ran into that wall and just tried to keep going. And I thought, oh no, here we go. But all it turned out to be was when they hot glued that sensor in, it unsoldered one of the wires off the LED emitter in there, or IR emitter. Soldered that back on, and everything seems to be working good. Okay, I think next steps here, we'll get it painted. I'll get the plastic cut to sit in, and probably solder the rails from section to section of the pit where the joiners are here, just so we don't have any future electrical problems. And gosh, that might be about it before we start looking at putting it in the layout. Mechanical check complete. Alright, with things kind of mechanically tested out here, moving on to some next things. So, of course, I had all these screws, added in from all the bracing on the back. And what you can see is how I'm covering it all up. And what I like about this is, you can really see all the kind of mold lines and ripples and whatnot from the injection molding process. Anyway, which, I mean, when you paint it, you'll still kind of see it. So here's some plastic strip I've cut. It was that stuff sitting in front of the speaker, which came from Lowe's. I think they use it, like you can form gutters out of it, or I'm not super sure what it's for. It was in the section with all the, the lumber and concrete blocks and everything else. Maybe it's flashing of some kind. I don't know. I just walk around Lowe's sometime and see things and think about what I could use it for. But, cuts with scissors real easy. So I'm just taking some white glue, and this is going to be probably impossible to do with one hand. And, just put it in. You can, so that'll be the next section there. So one section glued down, one section with some weights on it, letting that glue dry. I'll get this section glued in and just working my way across. So once I do that, we'll start getting some paint on it. Okay, so the pit has been painted. You can see I masked off the gearways. Figure it's probably not a good idea to get paint in there. Pit's been painted. I was just kind of go over it with a few different colors, just to kind of, you can see it's not a perfectly solid color. It's not, I don't know if I'd call it weathering, but yeah, it's a good base coat anyway. And I've retested it. Everything works good. So on the layout, I've got the old transfer table out, and I've started laying out where the new one's going to go. I spent a lot of time sitting here and kind of thinking through the buildings and how it's all going to work. And I guess quick disclosure for people that have been following me for a while, I'm not trying to make this look exactly like the real Greenville ever did. Most things on the layout aren't that way. It's cool when you can do it in spots. It really is. But things don't scale. you know, if you want to start doing things the way it actually was, I mean, you would dedicate this entire basement just to Greenville. So, you know, when you get in compression and everything else, we start making compromises. So at the end of the day, what's important for me here is Greenville had a half roundhouse. I have a half roundhouse. There was extensive engine facilities there that included a large transfer table and diesel shop. I will have a large transfer table and diesel shop with car shops and everything else. So it's look and feel. But past that, it's got to be operational. So that's kind of where my head's at, you know, as far as planning goes. So it's all about making things work, not so much following the prototype. So how I started laying this out, I struck one line. You can kind of see my pen line right here with the laser. Just put the laser down and mark the line. And then marked a parallel line. And of course now I got two parallel lines. How do I get one nice square end? I'm a toolmaker by trade. Haven't done toolmaking in a long time, but still a toolmaker at heart. So, you know, like precision kind of bothers me a little bit. I have to spend a lot of time trying to let it go. So how do you get something, you know, square enough? Well, here's a base for, you know, one of the engine shops. And literally all I'm going to do is kind of line one edge up to the line and boom, call that square. That's an injection molded piece. It's probably pretty dang square. So some of the little tricks I use for laying things out, don't overthink it. You probably got something handy. I was starting to think through like, oh, how do I make my right triangle and measure everything out? Why? It's got clearance anyway. All right. Well, we'll start working on getting this cut out and fill in the foam in the places I took out, and we'll see what it looks like when it's dropped in there. Okay, well there it is set in. Took me, I don't know, an hour. And I got pieces kind of gluing back in where the pit used to be. I was thinking, especially over here, you know, like I'm going to have to cut foam out again for pits for the engine houses. And I was trying to think through like, well, it seems silly to glue foam back in just to take it back out, but the lines are going to be different, and I decided that actually would be the easy thing to do, just to piece it all back in and then cut it all out like it was, just like it was fresh. One thing I have been playing with, I think this might be my diesel fueling track right here. I'm just going to do one track. But I've been thinking about this for a while. I think I want to kind of hide the pole by making it just in with the tanks. I'll get a couple more fuel tanks and just sort of try to blend the pole in that way. That tank there was actually, gosh, maybe a Bachmann from the early 80s. Like it was a diesel horn. It was silver, had a Shell logo on it. It's real dusty. I gotta clean it, but I just painted it black one day and it actually doesn't look too bad. So anyway, that's a whole nother project though. We're talking about this. So that's in there. I'm going to let everything sit for a while and we'll put power to it and see what it looks like. Okay. We are in place. We are temporarily wired. I got this AB set setting on the table, which is one of the reasons I wanted to go to this style. It's just long enough to fit an AB set on together. I have programmed this position as position 1. And if I run a calibration, we should run the table to the other end and come right back to here. So let's set that screwdriver in line with that rail. And we have life. I have checked the cab light and the warning light and the deck lights, everything works. They just don't come on when you're running this calibration, and the warning light on the end just stays solid, at least in this direction. So while that's moving, I do think long term, that control panel I've been using for the turntable was from my old layout. I just got this mounted here temporarily. I may take these cabinets out, find another home for them, and I might build a nice, proper control panel for the engine terminal here. Seems like I'm probably going to need it, honestly. But I think I want to get my final track configuration figured out first, so temporary stuff for now. So you can see the table is running down there. It is looking for the infrared sensor, just like the one that's under the screwdriver here. And once it sees that, it's going to kind of pause for a second and then come back this way, if everything's working good. Okay, there it found the sensor. Warning light is flashing. We've got track power to the table. TCS version 4 in that. And what I'm thinking, we're going to come off this curved turnout here, and come up alongside the engine house there. I'll get a couple storage tracks in here for my bigger engine sets I probably won't break up. Okay, and there we are saying that calibration stopped flashing, and looks like we're right back to that screwdriver to me. All right. Well, I guess the next thing to do is start getting track up to it. All right. Let's see what we got here. We got the 883. It's one of the bigger diesels I got, 6-axle. We'll come through the curved turnout. Leading into the diesel part of the servicing area here. You can see I got the track laid up to the transfer table with all my tools still laying out. The tracks branching off here will go to some ready tracks and maybe like a delivery track for shop supplies. Nice and smooth right onto the table. And we'll call that on. So we'll go ahead. We're at track 1. We'll just run that calibration again. So, kind of the future plans here. Back shop will sit there. I'll have 1 or 2 tracks pass all the way through and onto the turntable. I'm going to do, I got that car shop building there. I'm going to build another one. Have 2 of them over there. So car shop building 1, car shop building 2. And then this is the engine house kit. I'm going to do 4 of them. I've measured this out. The last one will sit right about there. So if I didn't go into that curve immediately coming off the table, it wouldn't quite clear by the time the last track lines up on the other end. So that's going to work out just about perfect for all of that to happen and get worked in. So yeah, the engine shop's starting to come together here. So I think I'm going to come off this track, come up through here, and go through the fueling pad. I'll put another switch in about like that for a track to come in for, you know, a couple tanker cars dropped off for fuel deliveries. And then, like I said, these switches, I think I'll do a ready track and probably like a, you know, shop supply delivery track, you know, like incoming wheels or a boxcar full of parts or something. And then, yeah, another ready track coming off this side. So, I think just the engine terminal is actually going to end up being, you know, a pretty good job to work. It'll be probably part of a local, but I'll probably leave, you know, a tiny shop switcher in here just to move things around, you know, inside the terminal. And I think it's going to be kind of fun, you know, to be able to pull out, you know, a single diesel or maybe an AB set and bring them over and, you know, park them on the lead here and, you know, put together a consist or bring an engine over and spin it around on the turntable and bring it back over to keep building up your consist in place. Which, you know, maybe there'll be a Hostler job here eventually someday. All right, so there is the table back in place. And just to show you, there's the deck lights on and there's the cab light on. They all do work. And if everything lined up okay, we should be able to nice and smoothly roll back off. Beautiful. Of course, this is the Broadway Limited RSD 15. A little bit too new for the era I'm trying to model here, but love these diesels, so I had to have a set. And there we are, coming to the end of Greenville siding at KO. Okay. Well, I hope everybody had fun following along with this build. This was probably getting to be a fairly long video, but pretty neat. I mean, these kits have been around quite a while. They're kind of getting hard to get your hands on anymore, honestly. But had a lot of fun building this. I think building out the rest of the buildings is going to be a lot of fun too. Get lights and everything, kind of like I do in the roundhouse, and I think this area is going to be pretty cool. And then I might go ahead and actually at least do some basic scenery here, because, I mean, gosh, it's just going to be cinders. All right. Thanks for following along, everybody. See you next time.